Begin the current Daf Mesechtes Nedarim Daf Pei Daled. To begin on the top line of the Amid, where the Gemara is in the middle of a discussion, a little of a complex discussion. We had mentioned in the previous Mishnah a case of Koinim Shaninen Labrius. If the woman says, "I'm taking Neda, I'm not having any pleasure from humanity," and we said he cannot be Mefer. We didn't explain why, but the next words of the Mishnah were, and she could have benefit from like a Chechapayim. So the Gemara had three different interpretations of what this halacha means, and the Gemara is going to continue in explaining and exploring what's the appropriate interpretation of this halacha. Something discussed in today's daf, like I mentioned, is Baal B'chlal Brias? Is the husband included in the terminology? When you say you're not going to benefit from humanity, do you mean your husband too, or do you mean everyone else? The husband is not called Brias. Demai is the halacha of what's called Damai. What is this? Is when you buy from an Amoritz produce, you're not really sure did he take off Trumas and Meisters, so therefore you have to take it off out of doubt. Meiser Ani Svekatayvel, the Gemara has a discussion regarding, do we consider Meiser Ani the poor man's tithe, which is on the third and the sixth year instead of Meiser Sheni you give to the poor man? If that Svekoi is Tayvel, in other words, it's not really Sveka, it's just the case that the Gemara is talking about, but does it create Tavel? If you don't take off Meiser Ani, does it make that produce Tavel, which we know Tavel has certain chumras and stringencies and nisurim? Do we say that if you took off Trumas and Meiser Rishon, and you just didn't take off Meiser Ani, would that make it into Tavel? And Taifas no, we discussed regarding certain types of Quranic gifts. The owner has the ability to choose which kind he's going to give it to. It's called Taifas no. He gets the benefit of that pleasure of choosing who's going to get it. And then the Gemara has a discussion regarding, is that considered a monetary value? Hence, that would be negeya for our halacha of our Mishnah. If you're not going to have benefit from humanity, is Taivas Hana considered having benefit from that person or not? So we begin the current daf. We start on the top of Peidalim and Aleph. This is going on the halacha of the Mishnah. Mishnah had said, like we said, Koin Mishaneni Labrius. It says, I'm taking Ned, I'm not having benefit from humanity. The Mishnah said these two statements. The question is it one statement or is it two statements? In the Yochel Hafa, said the Mishnah, husband cannot be Mefer. And the next words of the Mishnah were, and she could have benefit. It's not considered having benefit from humanity. Like a chekapeya is hefke, is whoever wants to take it. Now, so we're first going to finish up from the previous daf, where the Gemara had three different interpretations of this halacha of kohen shanen lebrius. The first interpretation was that it's not one big statement. It's that the husband, is the way Ula had explained it, is that it's these two different stages. Saying, well, first of all, the husband is not included in brias, in humanity. So what shaykhs could he be made for the neder? It's not inui. He could support her. So what's the next part of the statement? That we said v'oid. Even if, because then Mushayla is, why could she have like a chikapay if the husband's supporting her? She's not an aniyah. Said no. If the husband's poor, then she could have benefit from like a chikha and pay her, because that's not considered having benefit from humanity by taking the matnas aniyim. That was the Ula explained. Rabbah said, no, the husband is included in humanity, and that's what the Mishnah is saying, is matam. It's actually explaining. Why could the husband not be mefer? He cannot give her anything to eat because he's included in her neder of, I'm not having benefit from humanity. Oh, because she can have benefit, like a shekapeya. That's not considered having benefit from people. And the third interpretation, which is the one that we're going to continue on right now, was Reb Nachman. He said, like the Tanakama, no, the husband is not included in humanity. So then, if the husband is not included in humanity, so that would be the reason why he cannot be mefer, because he could feed her. So what's this next statement? The next statement was that if she gets divorced, what do you mean? How could she have like a pay if he's supporting her? Oh, if she gets divorced, then she could have benefit from like a shikha and pay her. That's the interpretation. Now that's what we continue on the top of Pedal and Alf. We're middle of this Gemara. Eisvei Rava of Nachman. Rava, who is the second interpretation, who held that the husband is included in brios, in humanity, and that's why that's the main reason why he cannot be mefer, because that the Mishnah says only because she gets like a chikapeya, so it's not inu nefesh, but if not, he would be able to be mefer. On Rav Nachman, who said that no, the husband's not included in brios, and the second teaching is a separate statement. Say, yes, is that really so that you're saying that the husband is not included in the terminology of humanity, of the people of the world? But now we learn the mission of Tzadim and Beis. If the woman says the following words, she says, Netula ani min Yehudim, I am taken from all the Jewish people. which essentially she's prohibiting her having pleasure of intimacy from any Jewish man. That's what a wife says when she's married to her husband. Says the Mishnah, Yafachelka. So what the husband should do is he should nullify his portion, meaning he's one of the men in the world, and then he could go ahead and be intimate. But she'll be forbidden from all other Jewish people from having intimacy. Now, says the Gemara, a little bit of a delicate extrapolation. Says the Gemara like this. If you're going to say that the husband is included in the terminology of briyos, when she says, so the way the Ram makes it sound like it's not the word briyos per se, it just means the concept about the Jewish people. When you say the people of the world, the Jewish people, if you say that the husband is included in that terminology of Yehudim, briyos, whatever the word is, you could explain, when she says that I'm taken from the Jewish people, you could make it sound like that it's talking about from intimacy. What do you mean? Because one of the people of the Jewish people is her husband, and she's coming to prohibit the intimacy with her husband that's permitted to her, with the intimacy of all the Jewish people that are out there. So that's what the Mishnah would mean on Daf Tzadi, that he can be made for his chelik only because he was included in the neder. If she gets divorced, then she's forbidden from all Jewish people, because intimacy is what's called devarim shebeino lebeina. It's not an inu nefesh. It's only something that's a relational idea, which we said on Daf Ayin Tesma Beis, he cannot be made for everyone else. He can only be made for la'atzmai, not la'cheim. Okay, but, says the Gemara, but if you say like Rav Nachman, the husband's not included when you say about all the people of the world or all the Jewish people. So when she says Netulam and the Yehudim, the husband, according to Rav Nachman, would not be included. If that's the case, you cannot say that her neder was from Tashmish, because even without a neder, she's anyways forbidden from having intimacy with every other Jewish man besides her husband. So v'azogsta, you're married. Obviously then, if you're saying that Tulani would be going on not intimacy, would be going on, let's say, benefiting from their food. If that's the case, says Rava, the nidra in the nefesh. So it's a neder in the nefesh. It should be able to be made for it forever, because the Gemara in the beginning of the parak said, when it comes to inu nefesh, which not eating food is considered an inu nefesh, both from himself and for others. Because you cannot say, says the Ran, that maybe Netulani min Yehudim is from the nos of the peras of the Yehudim when it's theirs, but if her husband buys it, as we had said such a chilik on the previous daf, the Ran had said, then she would be permitted them, because if that's the case, then why could it be made for his chilik? It's not inu nefesh. So, according to Rav Nachman, how do you understand the Mishnah of Tzadi, says Rava? It can't be going on Tashmish, because who is it going on? You're anyways forbidden every single man. So obviously, Baal would be B'chal Briyas, but you don't hold it, it's B'la B'chal Briyas. So if it's not B'chal Briyas, then it would be going on, not Tashmish, going on food, but then it's inu nefesh. So then why can't it be made for him? So, Eimalach says the Gemara, no, I could tell you it's not difficult on Rav Nachman. Kashani Hacha, here it's different because Dumucha Chamilsa, it's obvious the Alatera Ka'ascha Nafsha that she's forbidding herself from something that is permitted. In other words, Netulanim and the Yehudim definitely sounds like it's going on Tashmish and not on Hanos of Paris. Now, although in general you're right, the husband, according to Rav Nachman, is not included in Briyas, here he would be, because it's obvious that she's coming to prohibit something that is permitted. Now, every other Jewish man is already prohibited. Obviously, it's going on the tashmish of the husband, she's making herself forbidden, and therefore, here he would be including the terminology of Yehudim. So, although generally not, here it would be obvious that it's going on him, and therefore that's why Reb Nachman would not be difficult in the mission of Tzadi. So that finishes up the discussion from the previous stuff. Now the Gemara goes to a diuk from the halacha, the mission that we quoted. We said that, okay, when she takes a nedish on the animal briyas, said he cannot be made for it, and we said that yechayla lahanis beleket shikropeya, that she could benefit from the gleanings, from the forgotten bundles, and from the corner of the field. Now, the Gemara says, the Gemara points out, but look at time, we didn't say uba meiser ani, which is also for the matnas anim. We didn't say she could take from the poor man's tithe. Why didn't we say that? But Tanya, we're told in the Brisa that says uva meiser ani. You're pointing out leket shikropeya zog the ganze zettel. Say, and also meiser ani. Why don't you say that? So Amar Rabbi says, lekash, not a difficulty, because it's a machlekes. It's not a contradiction, it's a machlekes. The Bryce is going like Rebbe Eliezer. Our Mishnah is going like the Rabbanan. Why? So the Gemara says that now, like we learned in the Mishnah in Masechtas Demai. Mishnah says if someone buys produce from Amma Oretz, from ignoramus, so he has to take off Maisa. Now, when he takes off the Maisa, he takes off 1/10, he takes off from that Maisa a Trumas Maisa. They say Maisa Rishon could be eaten by a Yisrael. Truma cannot be. Now, but in the Maisa Rishon, there is Trumas Maisa. The Levi, when he gets his first tithe, he has to take off 1/10 from that 10th and give that to the Kohen. That is halacha like Truma. So that you have to give to the Kohen because that has Isser, not just Mammon related to it. Now, but the Maisa Rishon itself, that actually he could keep for himself after he separates it because that's permitted for non-Kahanim. And since the Isser part there's no problem, there's only the monetary part, meaning halachic, monetary halacha of Chodesh Mishpat, which is like, well, the Levi is going to say it's ours. He said, bring me proof that the Amor did not separate. The whole Demai was only a chashash. But therefore he could hold on to the Maisa Rishon. Fine. But then continues the Mishnah like this. Rabbi Eliezer, he says, what do you do with Meiser Ani? So that's regarding Meiser Rishon. What do you do with Meiser Ani? So Rabbi Eliezer says, Ein Adam Tzarech Likreis Shem. You don't have to even designate a title, Al Meiser Ani Shel Demai, which is that the Meiser Ani you don't have to separate. Why? Because Rabbi Eliezer holds that even definitive, that you didn't separate the Meiser Ani from the pile, what's the problem? It doesn't make it tevel, that it should be with the misa of eating tevel. So therefore, you don't have to be mafresh at meisafeh because what's the problem? Monetarily, you could hold on to it. Prohibitorily, there's no problem because it doesn't make it tevel. So therefore, says Rabbi Eliezer, you don't have to do anything. Ein dam tzarech likra shem. Chamaimim, that was the continued Talmud Beis, they say kairei shem. No. You have to call out on it that it's Meiser Ani. Because if, let's say, you knew for sure that someone didn't separate Meiser Ani from the pile of produce, it would be Tevel. And if you eat from the pile, it would be Chayv Misa, even though you were totally fixed it with everything else. But what you don't have to do, you don't have to actually separate the Meiser Ani. All you do is you Kairei Shem. You like say, oh, in the corner of it is going to be Meiser Ani. And that now makes it that it was separated already. But like the Mishnah says, you don't have to separate the actual Meiser Ani itself because you're allowed to eat it anyway. So you don't have to separate it. You just have to make it that it was separated from it. Okay. But says the Gemara, my love, isn't it that this, so to speak, theory that we had regarding Meiser Ani, if this woman could go ahead and benefit from this when she made an Isser Neder from all the people of the world, isn't it that this actually what they're disagreeing about? Why? So the Gemara explains. It's going to take a moment till we explain it with the Ran. But the Machlek is like this. Lamanda Amar, according to the one that says that Sveikoi Toivel, the Rabbanan, who said that the doubt of maybe having Meiser Ani over here makes it untithed produce. And therefore they said, okay, you gotta call Kriya Shem. You have to at least say that this is Meiser Ani to separate it from the untithed state that it was in. Ksaver, he holds, Islay Toivas Ana. As we're going to explain the Ran in a moment, why would they be dependent one on the other? But therefore, since there's a tevel part over here of Meiser Ani, when you separate it, this separation, meaning when you decide who it's given to, that benefit of that is to the owners. But given this, like Toivas Ana, since the owner gets the benefit of choosing which Ani he's going to give it to, so Loi Mahanya. So that would be the halacha of our Mishnah that doesn't say Meiser Ani that she can benefit from because you're benefiting from the owner, from that person who separates the Meiser Ani. You want to be able to get that. But according to Rabbi says that no, Meiser Ani, you don't have to say anything, you can just leave it in there. You can leave it without separating, without even calling out Meiser Ani. Somebody holds Sveikoi Einu Toivel, which the Ran just points out, it's not really the suffix that doesn't make it tevel. It's even definite. When you didn't separate, it doesn't make it tevel. It's just because we're speaking about the demai, which is suffix. We use the word suffix, but it's not al suffix. It's in general. Not separating my son does not make it tevel, and therefore if even by a situation of doubt it doesn't make it tevel, or it's even definite, like we said, so then less like tevel sana. So then the owner does not have any benefit of choosing who it is, like as if it has a monetary value, and therefore it's permitted for the woman, according to the Brisa, to have not only Leka Shechapeh, but also Meiser Ani. Now, okay, that's what the Gemara says. But you have to see in the Ran how he explains the source for this halacha. He says, which the Gemara is assuming, but if you just read the Gemara itself, it doesn't really make sense. You don't really understand why it should be. But the Gemara makes it sound like that Toivas Hana, this that the owner has this matana of his produce that he's giving out to someone, whether it be kahanim or aniyim, that is considered that he has a monetary value on that. The Gemara seems to make it dependent on if this matana, if it's not separated, does it make this tevel or not? That's what the Gemara was making dependent. Oh, he holds that it's sveike tevel, so then it has tevis ana. The sveike is not tevel according to them. It's not tevis ana. What shaykhs? Why would that be dependent one on the other? So he brings the source. He says the pasuk says, "V'lo yichalu es kodesh b'nei Yisrael." The Jewish people should not desecrate, profane the holy things of the Jewish people. Is asher yerimu, that which they are going to separate. Now, the word yerimu is a future tense. Yerimu, that they will elevate. Now, the Gemara darshans in Sanhedrin that we're talking about something that they're going to separate the truma from. So you didn't do it yet. You're talking about things. The pasuk v'lo yichalu is going on something that you didn't separate yet. It's asher yerimu, that they will, but it's not yet. Oh, and the fact that the pasuk says lo yichalalu, what does it mean lo yichalalu? Means like that it's tevel, because that's the chilul of, okay, don't be machal, because you didn't separate yet. Okay, now this item that's tevel, you're saying asher yerimu. Who does asher yerimu? The owners do asher yerimu. That's to say that the Toivas Hana is theirs. Why? Where do you see that? Because it says es asher yerimu. It's as if it's written that they will do this action. It's not a passive thing. It's like as if when it says in certain context the word nesina. Nesina, generally, as we're going to see actually shortly in the Gemara, connotes that I have the authority, I have the agency of deciding who gets it. So it's like I have these rights, which has a monetary value. If I could decide who comes the first 10 people to a certain event, it's worth money. I could get someone to give me kickbacks, whatever this and that. So, therefore, explains the Ran, specifically by something that creates tevel, meaning that'll be qualified for the pasuk of yichalalu. That's where there's going to have tevis enough for the bailim of yerimu. You see that in the pasuk where it talks about these two ideas of yerimu, which is the tevis hana, is the same pasuk of lo yichalalu, which Ran explains is going on tevel. So you see that when somebody creates tevel, the pasuk is equating that with someone who has yerimu, which is the tevis hana. So it's not a svara thing. If you're going to read the Gemara, you're going to say, wow, okay, you read it quick, you're doing the daf, and say, oh, okay, I guess you totally something. What shaykhs? What does tevel have to do with tevis hana to tell me that meiser ani is machlekes in the Mishnah and the Brisa, during the and the Chachamim, to tell me if this woman can have hana from people's meiser ani or not? So Ran's explaining. He says this is what the pasuk is telling you. Now, so therefore, you come to this machlekes. So meiser ani, what happens is, according to the one that holds that if you're not sure if there's meiser ani here or not, it's not going to make a tevel. So if it's not going to make a tevel, so no tevis ana, like we said, because based on the pasuk of yichalu. So therefore, she can benefit from people's meiser ani because it's just hefker. You have no vested interest over here. It's not worth money for you. But according to the one that says you have to do kriya shame on it, you have to make it meiser ani. He holds because even a suffix of meiser ani would make it into tevel. Oh, so therefore you have to call out the name. So if the suffix would make a tevel, so that means it's tevis hana, because that's included what the pasuk says, "V'lo yichalu es kodesh b'nei Yisrael," which tells us that since there's a element of chil over here, if you don't separate it's tevel, then that's where the pasuk says yerimu, that you get to decide who to give it to. So therefore, since there's hana, which is the yerimu, which is the tevis hana, okay, so the woman cannot have benefit from those people's ma'aser ani because she's benefiting from them and not from hefker, because there's still, although he has to give it to ani, but you still get to decide who to give it to. So that's one point. But he says one more point. He says that my Rebbes have explained the sugya, but they didn't explain what's the machlekes of what is toivel and ain't toivel depend on? Meaning, what is the primary machlekes of the Mishnah in Demai? We're saying that this machlekes in between our Mishnah and the Brisa of the Meiser Ani of the woman is dependent on the machlekes of Rabbi Chum in the Mishnah in Demai. Would Meiser Ani make a tevel or not? What's pshat in that machlekes? Where are they coming from? If that's Demai or not? So he says, I saw those who give deichik pshat. He says, I'll tell you what I think. According to one who holds that it's not making into tevel, the reason is because he holds it's not possible that this pile should be any more severe than if you would have Meiser Ani mixed into it. Meaning when you have this tevel, you have Meiser Ani mixed in, right? You didn't separate the Meiser Ani. Says the Ran that it can't be more chamer than Meiser Ani itself. In other words, he says the following story. He says, by Truma, I can understand why, if you don't separate Truma, the food item is tevel, because Truma itself is forbidden. So, of course, it makes sense that the tarayvis, the mixture of Truma, which you didn't separate, would also make it into a prohibited food item, because you have to separate it. So, and it does not become bottled, so that makes it forbidden. But the Meiser Ani, Meiser Ani itself is permitted for a non-kohen. How could its mixture, by not separating it, be more chamer to say that you can be chayiv misa for tevel when the Meiser Ani itself is not chayiv misa? He says that's the reason of the one who holds that ain't a tevel, that it would not make it into tevel. According to one who holds that it would be tevel, that would make it into tevel, he learns that from a drasha. As the Gemara in Yevamos Pevav Marav says, you would think you would not be chayiv only on tevel that you didn't separate anything at all. Let's say you separate Truma Gedoyla, but you didn't separate Meiser Rishon. Let's separate Meiser Rishon, but you didn't separate Meiser Sheni. Or even if you separated you didn't separate Meiser Ani, how do you know that you'd be chayiv al tevel? So it says in the pasuk Leisuchol Lechol, it says you can't eat b'sharecha, meaning these gifts you have to eat in Yerushalayim. Now, Hal Noemer it says v'achol b'sharecha b'saveyu. Now, what's masharecha amal alon is Meiser Ani, which your sha'arim over there when the Tumat Matnas, it's all the matanas they are referring to, including Meiser Ani. So it's like Gzeir Shav. Avkam Meiser Ani here also when it says that Leisuchol Lechol b'sharecha is also referring to Meiser Ani. So since it says Leisuchol Lechol b'sharecha, it's telling you that you cannot eat your stuff until you separate all the gifts, including that of Meiser Ani, because we see another pasuk that says Bisharecha, that also refers to Meiser Ani. So therefore, that says the Ran is where that other opinion is coming from, that it is considered that it's going to be Toivel, the Meiser Ani. That's the machlokes that they have. Is it because Meiser, how can it be more chamer than Meiser Ani itself? Well, one says no, we have Gzeir Shav, Bisharecha, that tells us that. And again, since that's the machlokes, if it's considered as making tevel or not, that the Ran explained based on the pasuk V'leichalu is where we know that the halacha of tevis and no would be dependent on if it's tevel or not. That resolved the contradiction from our Mishnah that we don't say she could get Meiser Ani, and the Brisa says she could get Meiser Ani, but we're not done. Gets a little bit more, the plot thickens, because Amalei Abaya says to him, Abaya is coming to reject the answer that his Rabbi Yosef had given, to say that no, Abaya says the Mishnah and the Brisa are still difficult. Why still difficult? Remember, Rabbi Yosef gave a good shot. He quoted this Mishnah in Demai, and he showed that they're disagreeing regarding if the suffix of Meiser Ani makes it tevel or not, and then like the Ram brought the pasuk that the tevel or not is dependent on tevis and or not. He says no, says Abai, you have no raya to answer the question of the Mishnah and the Brisa, because the kuliyam is sveke tevel. I could tell you that actually everyone holds that if you're not sure if there's Meiser Ani here or not, and if you didn't separate it, it would make it into tevel. As the Ram just points out, why is he taking that side, not the other side? He couldn't say everyone holds the suffix would not make it into tevel, because then you wouldn't understand the Rabbanim. If it doesn't make it tevel, why would you have to do a kriya shame and say, oh, the Meiser Ani is in there, I'm separating it. They just don't have to actually separate. Why would you have to do that if it doesn't make it into tevel? So say no, everyone holds suffix would make it into tevel. So then who's the difficult one to understand? Then Rabbi Eliezer is the difficult one to understand. If the suffix of Meiser Ani makes it into tevel, why would Rabbi Eliezer say that you don't have to even do a kriya shame of Meiser Ani? Says Abai, I'll tell you. Rabbi Eliezer and Rabban Malkim, what they're disagreeing about is the following principle. Rabbi Eliezer Sabi holds, the Amaratzim, they're not suspect regarding Meiser Ani because he most definitely separated it. The reason why when you buy it from him, you don't even have to do a kriya shame, is not because Meiser Ani wouldn't make it into tevel. Of course it would. So if it would, so hasta sufik. So why don't you have to separate it out to the suffix? He said, no, we have no suffix of Meiser Ani. Why not? Why is he sure separating Meiser Ani? Because even since he wouldn't lose anything, because if he wanted to, he would have a way of having it without having any problems. And therefore he has no problem about separating. Why? Because the ilu mafka nichse. Since if he would go ahead for a moment and make his nechasim hefker, Vavon, he would be a poor person. V'shakalehu, and then he could take it himself. So less they pseida. So he wouldn't have a loss. In other words, the Yam Arts is not concerned about going in and doing that because he's thinking like, what's my problem? If I'll make my nechasim hefker, I'm on the, and I can take it. So why shouldn't I separate? I could take the stock I put into the me'abandas pushka myself, and so why wouldn't I do that? So the oni is going to do it. You could do it. Be mafkin nechasim ichbena oni, right? And then I take it. That's the Amartz's thinking. So he's going to separate it. So when you buy demai from him, you don't have to separate my son because he for sure did it already. It's not a havarian. Amaratzim not reshuim. It's just certain things that it's difficult. It costs geld. We cut corners and it's come to geld. But it's costing us happens. So why wouldn't I do it? Now, but Rabbanan Sabis, what's the Rabbanan then? Why Rabbanan say that when you buy the demai, you have to do a kriyah shemai? They say no. You have to understand the psychology of this Amartz. A person will not be mafker his nechasim. Why not? The mirtas is afraid the mazachibu in the shachrina. Hefka, kaina, hefka. The kid's going to jump in before you. Say hefka, and the kid's going to jump in kaina. That's it. You lost all your stuff. They are suspect because he's afraid to be mafker. I don't want to do such a thing. You have those propositions that your accountant says, look, if you do this, I just don't know what's going to happen. I don't want to do that. That's already too much of a risk. So he says the Amoritz is not going to do that, and then he's not going to say Rid Ma'aser on the end. That's the machlekes. But ultimately, we're at a point right now that we didn't really answer the question yet. Right? Rabbi Yosef wanted to resolve the contradiction on mission of the Brisa by telling you it's dependent on the machlekes. He says Abai, no, that's not their machlekes. They're not disagreeing if Ma'aser only makes a tevel or not. You're misunderstanding the Mishnah. Everyone agrees that it does make a tevel. If it does, then you're back to the question. If we make a tevel, that means that there is tevel zinah. Then how could we understand the brisa that says that the woman could get Ma'aser ani? Our Mishnah is correct that you can't because she's having hana from the brias. So we're back to the question: how to resolve the machlekes between the Mishnah and the Rabbanan. So Rava Amma he says anu mahalach. He says that kan over here in the case of our Mishnah we're talking about b'Ma'aser ani maschalek b'teich habayis. Talking about the poor man's taif that's given out from the person's home. What shaykh? Who cares were you giving it out? No, there is actually a difference. Because the chesiva bein nesina, the pasuk in the Nedarim used the terminology of when you're giving it out in your house of giving. What does it say in the pasuk? It says v'nasato la'levi la'ger b'goyim. You're going to give it to the ger, to the yasim, the almana, v'achal b'sharecha v'saveyu. So what shaykh? Who cares that says nesina? Okay. Shamachi. Therefore, since the balabais is giving it out, so if you're giving it out, so Shloimy, I was, remember me? Oh yeah, Kim, you come. Right? So there's a monetary value over here that you're giving it out. Oh, so the gears is not lay, it's law. That's why the Mishnah doesn't count that. When this woman says, I'm not having benefit from humanity. I'm done with these people. Animals, first. I don't like people. I'm not having benefit from any person ever again. People are cruel, people are bad, only animals. Right? Dolphins, whatever it is, but no people. So go ahead, get some food. Let's see where, out in the wild, right? Someone's going to have to get from someone. So it's like a chicken pay against them, because that's some hefka. And what's a Ma'aser ani? No, Ma'aser ani, because the guy's giving me in this house. That's for Nasata, Gepteros. So that's Taifas Anah. Says, you go in the back of the line. So that's a Taifas Anah. Whereas Khan over here in the Braisam, that meaning in our Mishnah didn't say Ma'aser ani because, like we said, because it's going to have benefit. But over here in the Brais's Toma, but Ma'aser ani maschalek b'teich hagronis. We're talking about where the Ma'aser ani is given out in the granary, where he just leaves it there in the granary. Whoever wants to take it takes it. Though that's keeping the chesiv based since at the end of the arm. V'hanachta b'sharecha. You should leave it in your gates. Then she could have benefit because she's not getting from you, getting from Hefker. So Ma'aser ani is not a contradiction. It depends if it's going to be mutter or asa. Now, the Ran actually brings contradictory interpretations. The Sifri brings it as a contradiction. On the one hand, it says, "V'nasata la'leibel yasam." It says, "V'nachta b'sharecha." Answers the Sifri. Depends when. Kan b'ma'aser chama, kan b'ma'aser gsham. Those in the Zimitzat, those in the winter. Now, the question is, what does that mean? So some explain that in the summer months he leaves it in the granary. When it comes to the winter, he brings it into the house and then he gives it out and then it would be forbidden. Some explain the opposite. In the winter, he gives it on this half, and the leftover is what he leaves. That he in the summer after the winter, he leaves it in the granary. So the question is, which one's first, which one's second, which one is he leaving, which one is he taking? But Lamaisa, in the winter, he's giving it out. In the summer, he leaves it out there in the granary. And again, when it's left, she could take it. When he's giving, then she cannot. Now, the Gemara continues the halacha of the Mishnah. We had mentioned the next case was, let's say she didn't say from all humanity. She said, Kahan Levim Nenli. Says, yeah, these priests, they feel they're superior to everyone else. No Kohen, no Levi can benefit from me. So we said, Yitlu v'chulu. We said, okay, but it doesn't make a difference. Yitlu al-karchai. This is their rights to their trumas and maisus. I don't care what you said. They could take it forcibly. But we said, if let's say she says, Kahanim Eilu, Levim Eilu, she says, Man Shulchan, the Kohen, there's Eg Ebakri Gunish, then Yitlu Achem says, okay, fine. You don't have to give it to that Kohen Levi. Then other Kohen Levi will take. But the first Gemara makes a dig from the Reisha. Alma, we see from the Reisha that Toibas Hana, that a monetary benefit of choosing who you're going to give it to is Eina Mammon. There's not monetary value. Why? Because since you're Kahanim that became forbidden in having benefit from her, because she said, no Kohen, no Levi is getting benefit from me. And still you told me that they could take their Truma. But what do you mean? How I thought she's not going to give benefit. At least the Gemara is understanding at this point that she says she's not going to give benefit. So how could they get the Trumas and Maisus? The problem is, Ema Seifa, look at the Seifa. We said, let's just say these Levim cannot benefit from me. We said, yeah, okay, then others have to take it. Wait a second. Why others? Avlahani loy? But what, these Kahanim not? Well, Amatevas and Amman, then obviously because giving it to them, even though it's theirs, is considered Mammon. So it seems to be contradictory inferences from these two halachas of our Mishnah. Some of Aisha says, Loikash, not difficulty. Because again, actually, these two statements in our same Mishnah is actually machlokes Tanoim. The Seifa, so it sounds like one Tana, but the Gemara is answering, no, it's two different Tanoim. The Seifa is actually Rebbe, who he holds that Toibas Hana is Mammon, and therefore, it would be forbidden for those Kahanim and those Levim that you said, you're Shulchan over there. But the Reisha, the Mamish, the line before that in our same Mishnah, is Rabbi Yehuda, who holds Toibas Hana is Lav Mammon. So it's Mamish, in the Mishnah, it's two different Tanoim. What's this machlokes that you're referring to? So the Gemara says the time like learn the Brisa. The Brisa says, someone steals his friend's tevel. The guy Mamish just finished his harvest season, and you walk in, you say, shine the grain over here. You start filling up your sack with this guy's tevel grain. And he eats it. What's the halacha? So it's actually machlokes. The first time that says, Mashalmloi demei tivloi. You pay him the value of this tevel. Now, that's Divi Rebbe. Now, what does it mean, the value of tevel? Tevel is the entire untithed produce, which means to say, in the untithed produce, you have your chulin, which ultimately is going to be permitted, and you also have inside of it the chirimis amaisus. Now, why are you paying him? He doesn't get the chirimis amaisus. It goes to the kohen. Oh, because there's a toivas hana that he would have. He has a big, Millie has a $10 million harvest. There's $1 million over here that's going to Levim. So kickbacks is not a new thing. Let me say this. There's legal kickbacks also. There's here, give to man einikol the kohen. I'm going to give you the deal that I have, coming up. So shine the geld. Now when this guy ate up the tevel, so he also lost the tovas hana of the trumas amaisus. So says Rebbe, okay, you got to pay him for the value of the tovas hana of the trumas amaisus also. Now, Rabbi Yehuda says no. You only pay the monetary value of the chulin that's inside the tevel, but not the value of the trumas amaisus, even for the tovas hana that there would be. And then because he holds, tovas hana is not mammon. Says the Gemara, my love, isn't it b'hakam eflikin? This is what they're disagreeing about. We can pay him an alf. The Rebbe, sub-Rebbe holds, tovas hana is mammon. Having benefit from what to do with it is considered monetary value, then we got to compensate him. Yehuda holds tovas hana ain't a mammon, and therefore you only have to pay him the monetary value of the chulin. So therefore that explains the halacha of our Mishnah. The two different lines of if they could take al karcha or yitla acherim, is this machlekes Rebbe Yehuda is deciding which kind to give it to is considered monetary value. Then they can't take it because she made it isana or kam levim. And if not, then they could That's where the Gemara finishes off at this point, trying to show that this would be the explanation of the resolution of our Mishnah. But as we'll continue in the next daf, the Gemara will actually flip that and say it's not muchach. Thank you to anytime for hosting us.